Welcome, everyone. This is the November 13th meeting of the GLIMPRINT seminar series. It's a slightly different time from usual, so thank you for coming today. As always, I need to remind people that this meeting is live streamed and recorded and available in edited form online on YouTube afterwards. We have our seminar series. This is a collaboration between GLIMPRINT, the IMAG MSM Multiscale Modeling and Viral Pandemics Working Group, OPID-VT, Virtual Human Development, and some other organizations try to help us build this community of multiscale modeling together. As always, Tom Helikar, myself, Jim Sluka, and Lorenzo Vischini are available to take your comments, suggestions. We can always make things better. Don't hesitate to let us know what we could do. We have a variety of communication channels. Please help us get the words out on new seminars and on our seminar archive. We depend on you to help us build a community. If you have a publication to share, we could put it up on the IMAG MSM site. Anything to do with infection modeling, we'd be happy to put up there. We also have the GLIMPRINT site. You could submit your news for seminars, meetings, workshops, job openings, grants, also publications. Please help us make that site a live site. Coming up, we have a talk from Columbia University on the 20th, next week. November 27th is a holiday in the US, so there's no meeting. December 4th and December 11th, we have seminars scheduled. Please suggest yourself, suggest your students, your postdocs. If you've spoken before, it's okay to speak again. If there are people you'd like to hear from, it could be experimentalists, people developing technology, clinicians, anyone you would like to hear speak in this environment, please let us know, and we'll do our very best to get those people on the books. Lorenzo is very good at securing speakers, so please do help us build our audience and our list of speakers for the seminars. Tomorrow we will have a steering committee meeting at 11 a.m. We're going to discuss the recent virtual conference, plan next year's conference, discuss attendance at these seminars and how to promote attendance, and discuss GLIMPRINT membership recruiting. Any other announcements to make before we move on to the seminar? Okay, today we have Shihao Yang from Georgia Institute of Technology, talking about big data infectious disease estimation from flu to COVID-19. And I will turn the floor over to Shihao.
Thank you for having me in the seminar, GLIMPRINT seminar. I'm Shihao from Georgia Tech. I'm in the School of Industrial System Engineering. I work on machine learning for infectious disease estimation. And I changed the title a little bit to be more informative about the approach that I use. It ranges from Google search, differential equation, ordinary differential equation, and to the modern day transformer attention mechanism. So I want to give you a bird's eye view of the kind of the solution from my perspective to the infectious disease forecasting and prediction, and also a little bit of history about how I get into this, was the kind of current state of my kind of tools that I have for me to tackle the task. So I kind of start working on this when I was back in the PhD days. Back then, it was infectious disease is not too much of a heated subject. We are looking at the flu, and the particular model, a little bit of history I get into is from Google. That we'll spend some time talking about that using Google search information for infectious disease prediction. And later on, kind of expanded the efforts to have kind of a regional and state level forecast, include some electronic health records, getting some 4 week ahead predictions and looking at multi-disease dengue fever. And then the obvious elephant in the room is the COVID-19. So we're going to, in this talk, also talk about the transfer learning, what we learned from the Google side onto the COVID side, including some early detection alternative data, uh, looking at the state level prediction using Google, and look at the county level model and predictions, and how do we sharpen, have better performance and interpretability to the county level model, have a better model, and lastly, in the new norm of kind of COVID and flu together, how do we do a joint predictions? And then towards the most latest stage, where we have kind of this most recent Google search updates and what do we do with that? All of this works are kind of independently submitted and is available on the CDC website. I think the government shutdown is now, the government is reopened today. So if you go to the CDC website, here you probably will see my model coming up, will start to come up next week, hopefully. So on the process that I use, the approach that we use, in addition to machine learning models, pure machine learning models, I try to also include scientific informations about the compartmental model, SEIR type of model in ordinary differential equation settings, and some large language models set up that I also brief touch about after in this talk. So hopefully I'll get back to this flyer in the end, and you will have a more holistic, better idea about the approach that I take to really tackle this problem of infectious disease forecasting. So let me get back to the very beginning of how I kind of get inspired and involved in this. What is the target? So there was a very early paper and in Nature published in 2008. This is by Google themselves. And what they are trying to do is very simple. United States have this influenza-like illness percent, basically measures among the outpatient visits, how many of them are flu-related, and that is being reported in the red line here as a percent LI. And this reporting has been dating back to the 1990s. And it used to be that because of the reporting delay and manual process involved, you can see that the red line is being lagging behind the real time. So Google coming in saying, the traditional approach is probably lagging behind, but we actually have the search engine information. Maybe when there's more searches for cough, for fever, for in general, for flu, that is indicative about a higher flu incidence, and maybe we can build a model like the black one right here. That kind of is ahead of the CDC's number and also match closely with the CDC's reporting. So this is obviously very early days, 2008. That's a little bit of history. And you probably no longer hear Google flu trends anymore today because it kind of didn't work. So there was a big reported discrepancy between the Google estimated amount and the actual estimated amount reported by the CDC. And that is in the 2012 and 2013. And even before that, in 2009, there's a swine flu season, and Google completely missed that. So that's interesting because the story and the promise is very, very strong. Why did Google miss that? It turns out the modeling effort that they have is actually very poor. So if we look at the appendix of the Google's paper, you'll realize that the model they have is a simple linear regression. So it transformed percent LI as the target and the single predictor of a query that is essentially combining the search volume of a few different keywords altogether. That is the predictor. One response, one predictor, simple linear regression. And once the model is built, it's kind of deployed as a software release. It's a version of software release. It's a static. It doesn't really get updated all the time. And that's why, all of these situations could happen, that there's a model drift and there is overfitting risk, so on and so forth. I don't want to really get into too much here. Uh, Let me go into here, and this is our kind of in 2015 we come up. This is the year where Google Flutrans officially retired and stopped the service, and we kind of, as the academia, come in to salvage the effort. So what we did is actually using the Google search data, but use it slightly better. Right? We're not super fancy. You can still see a regression type of a model. It's just that we have a few more predictors. Instead of lumping all the search volume into one single data stream, maybe let's look at the search volume for cough, for fever, for flu differently. Have them to be a multiple linear regression, to say the least. And then maybe it's a time series. So during the season, we actually don't know what's going on today, right now, but the CDC did a good job of compiling what is the reported flu-related case for the previous weeks. And maybe those information should be updated into the model. So the model really is nothing more than an autoregressive model with some exogenous variable, that is the Google search information. And then we do a dynamic rolling update, have some usual trick of L1 regularization in the estimation of the parameter alpha and beta here, that already did a much better job than the Google themselves. In fact, to this day, this model is still being used as the state-of-art nowcasting model. Okay, nowcast means that as of this week, I'm trying to estimate how many people are sick as of this week. So this is it still performs one of the best model in the CDC context nationwide for a nowcasting model. So that's one of the early work that we did, and that's we kind of the angle that we break the ice into the infectious disease modeling from a data science perspective. Then we quickly realized that people care about the national prediction as a whole, but they also care about the disease closer to their home, right? So we want to do a regional level forecast. And when we do the regional level forecast, we quickly realize that the current state of art of regional level forecast simply apply the same national level model on each of the region individually. So there is a missing of a pooling of information. And what's more, there's a missing of a multi-resolution information. So US as a whole, you also have this kind of trial and proved Argo model for the US in general as a whole, and that is also not really used. So we come up with a Argo 2, ArgoNet, etc. Those are follow-up works that really tackle the regional level disease forecast. The idea is really simple. Why don't we? You can think about it as a two level of a regression. So in the first level of a regression, we build each individual region's model based on the individual region's information, such as the Google searches. All right. Why do we want to build each individual model? Because there are spatial kind of heterogeneity. All right. I want to zoom into this very interesting chart that I see about how people refer soft drinks. Okay. So you can see the northern part, they call it pop. Southern part, where I am, Atlanta, call it Coke, right? And in California and New England, they call it soda. So what does this really says? It really says that in different region, there are search behavior that is kind of inherent to that region. There's a cross-region heterogeneity in the search behavior. So we want to have a individual area kind of search model onto the space of a fever and flu. This is a real example. You see that people sometimes prefer search for fever, sometimes prefer search for flu. It's just that heterogeneity. Once those heterogeneity is being taken care of by each individual region, then we kind of do a second level of a regression, then have kind of regress a final number, taking into account of all the other regions' number together with the national level number, and run a second step regression that achieve the pooling of the information. So in together, the high level is just two-step regression. Run this regression twice so that it achieves a pooling of information together with respecting the cross-region heterogeneity. And this is really just the beginning of the journey. And like I earlier mentioned, we don't restrict ourselves to the search engine data. How about then the electronic health records, health data, and in addition, in particular, those are the cloud-based electronic health records. So think about once the traditional health records, of course, not there's a paper-based one and there's electronic one. And in addition to the electronic one, nowadays hospitals use software provided by third parties, and the data is stored, for example, in AWS. And if there's a proper data sharing agreements in place where you can share the aggregated amount of data, we can actually know today, as of today, what's the number of patients yesterday, and among them, how many people are having a flu-related symptom. So we kind of have an information edge from a selected few samples of hospitals across the US, and that enables us to kind of make a prediction into 4 weeks into the future. And there we kind of start to build our real world model and start to broadcast our model in lifetime. And then the next question is, okay, why, if the same kind of architecture or same data-driven idea works for flu, what is stopping us from tracking other vector-borne disease such as dengue fever, right? So sorry, mosquito-borne disease such as dengue fever. So we precisely did that. We assembled the same idea, the search engine information from the 5 tropical countries, and we're still also able to have a proof of concept done that the search information can be used to track dengue case counts in the 5 countries. And then things are going smoothly, and we're kind of getting ready for those infrastructure, and then the kind of COVID-19 pandemic hits, and that's where the prior work of this really start to become more timely and relevant to ordinary people. All right. So onto the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, the first thing we did is to transfer a lot of what we learned using the Google search information onto the COVID-19. We also learned that alternative data from health records, from whatever you can find, will help enable a big data driven insights that may be also helpful for COVID-19 pandemic estimation, especially those underreported in the early days. And then we also have some meta innovation, which we'll talk about today, using transformer, using more of a very recent sequential modeling technique for county level time series prediction. And also, so far, the talk through right now didn't really make use of the celebrated SIR model or insight like those. So how do we incorporate those compartmental model structure into the data-driven predictions? So talk about those, and then we think about it as a lifelong journey. So we're continued participation with the CDC hospitalization prediction. I'll show you a screenshot about where is our model. So that is onto the COVID-19 pandemic. Onto the COVID-19 pandemic, we published this paper in the April. Official published in the May of 2020, but we actually conducted all the analysis in April of 2020. And back then, if you recall, nobody really know what's going on and how bad it could be. So we kind of looking around, and also there's underreporting. What do? We kind of looking at 2 sources of data sets. The idea is, if I have a CDC reported ILI, which, if you remember, stands for influenza-like illness, which is defined to be a fever or cough without a known cause other than the influenza, all right? And then back then, COVID-19 is not a known cause, so a lot of people have COVID was actually reported as a symptom-wise, as an ILI. And then we have this red line that is estimated from pharmaceutical data. This pharmaceutical data is a prescription-based data. And in order for you to get this prescription data, there must be some virologic tests. So essentially, we are contrasting syndromic reporting of the LI to the virology test based on the pharmaceutical sales data. And you see that the gap between them is really ILI that should have been reported as the COVID. And we estimated, how many people is actually really have this COVID. And this is done, published in the May of 2020. And later, August of that year, the virology study actually confirmed what we find in this study. Just again, another example to show that alternative data and creative thinking can help with early disease response. And of course, another data source that we're very familiar with is the Google search data. So this is a plot of the raw data. And hopefully when I show you this plot of the raw data, you can immediately see that there is an information edge in the sense that whenever the red line, which is the search for the loss of taste, goes up, even this small kink, whenever this one goes up, it will be followed by an upward trend of COVID death. So this really shows that the promise, right? I show this to convince a colleague about, the Google search information is indicative of the COVID situation. And he's immediately on board. And he's almost immediately on board too quick in the sense he's asking, okay, if the raw data is this good, do we need any actual model to this? Well, the answer is the data is really, really good. So the modeling effort in this case does not have to be super fancy. Okay, what we are using on a state level COVID hospitalization forecast is very simple. Just do a vector autoregressive model. So essentially, you're trying to forecast the state level hospitalization. We use the past few legs of the hospitalizations, some covariates from the state level populations, mobility, stuff like those, and then search volume information, and some seasonality of the day of the week and all that corresponding for the time series seasonality. So essentially, this is just a linear regression that adjusts the level. So you do see that, although they are very, very similar, the level right here and right here are not different, are not the same. So you do some level and bias adjustments, you already have a pretty strong state level COVID-19 hospitalization predictions. And then we realized that, okay, state level is probably not enough. As the COVID progress, we start to collect data on start to report data on each of the county, right? People really, really want to know, ideally what's happening in their zip code. So we started with the county level data. You can see that it's still the same model, but we are now using a more matrix notation to put everything together, and we are able to do it. But we're able to do it in a sense that is, things start to look a little bit messy as the resolution goes higher and the scale gets a bit different. For example, you'll see that this is Atlanta. This is basically how Atlanta cases transfer to other region. And you see that here, the pixels are blue and then immediately white and then blue and immediately white. This here should have been a light blue. But because of the data is like each county level data, there's also county discrete level jumps from one county to another. This works, but the accuracy is not great because when you see a neighboring county have 5 and you have 0, it should really be that this area is in a low intensity. The 0 doesn't really mean, nothing at all. It just means low. So having this kind of inspiration, what is doable, but the accuracy is not up to somewhere we are happy with. And so we identify the problem to be in the technical term called smoothing, is really just, you should pull the neighboring average. So we put this together, and then we kind of come up with a Gaussian process, spatial-temporal Gaussian process technique. Now you can see that the Atlanta area is much nicer, right? It have a effect towards the south, broadcasting in this way, where the LA have kind of go through here and also all the way through here. The effects are smooth. And this gives much better accuracy for the county level results, right? They basically smooth out the random noise. And what's the idea behind this technique? You can think about it intuitively. Like, I have a picture like this. Why don't I just take the spatial average, such as finding the k nearest county and take their average? That's the correct intuition. It's just that when you find the k nearest county, the near is not in the sense of a uniform radius of a circle, right? It must be data driven. So we kind of get this inspiration from earthquake. In earthquake, the earthquake transmission, the wave propagation doesn't really follow a radius circle. No, it follows the mountain ridge. So you should have this. What you should have is this oval shape that's kind of dictated by the data. So you kind of borrow the earthquake modeling technique onto the infectious disease. So what we find is that it's not even an oval. It's a little bit of oval here, and oval here, mini ovals, kind of putting them together. And the near is basically getting a data-driven shape, not a circle, and is able to kind of having this very nice transmission graph about if the LA number shoots up, where may those number having a subsequent effect towards the transmission. So this is a nonlinear, non-stationary spatial-temporal Gaussian process. This is the technique's name, but really what they achieve as a result is those smooth graph that is a lot more convincing to an epidemiologist about the transmissions. So finally, we have all of this work deployed and being used. And as time marches on, it's realized that COVID is not going to die. COVID is not going to be like vanish anymore. COVID will come back as a seasonal infectious disease from time to time. So people will have to live in the post-pandemic era where kind of flu and COVID-19 co-occurrence is going to be the new norm. It's like you also have RSV, you also have adenovirus circulating in the population. So this is kind of our final paper in this sequence, talking about a joint prediction of influenza with the COVID-19. So high level is still, on the left hand side we have COVID, on the right hand side we have influenza. The data come from Google, from COVID back then we are using a New York Times Git repository, and the influenza have CDC, also have this Google search information. So we have a national level estimate, regional level estimate, recent trends, state level estimates for both COVID and influenza in a kind of mirroring fashion. And then from here, the recent trends will go to the neighboring state as an intermediate kind of information sharing middle steps. And in the end, you have a kind of a regression, individual region model regression, and an ensemble region model for the flu side and for the COVID side. And lastly, we do a joint ensemble together to get our final estimate for influenza and COVID-19. Each of the arrow that you see right here, you can think about it as a slightly improved version of linear regression. All right, just think about that. It's a linear regression of all of this data, put them together, what are the data sources, and in the end, joint estimation together. And then the final tool is not a regression anymore. It becomes a winner takes all a selection method. So instead of putting it as a linear aggregation of all of those models, we find the model that kind of empirically perform the best. That's kind of a joint COVID plus a influenza technique together. So that's kind of the last paper, final paper that we have in this sequel. We're pretty happy with its performance. And uh, so as far as the linear model goes and accuracy goes, we think about, this is kind of, we're happy. Then the next level of question is, okay, if we were to get it to be even more accurate, inevitably we'll get into the realm of nonlinear models. And nonlinear models, what is the best nonlinear models for such a heterogeneous time series? And that inspired us to have look into attention mechanism. Attention mechanism is the backbone of the large language model. A large language model is, nowadays general public call it AI, right? But really it's just a large language model. But then what is a large language model? Large language model is a sequence of kind of a smartly engineered neural network together, and it's called attention mechanism. And back then there was a colleague of mine really working on large language model. This is actually happening in 2021. This is before OpenAI release is ChatGPT. So a lot of colleagues come to me and asking, okay, I don't really know too much about infectious disease prediction, but I've been working on language model a lot, and I know that language model can also serve as a purpose of a general sequence modeling, right? If you still don't see this, yeah, he said, just think about it as a foreign language that you don't speak and nobody really understands. Is a language spoken by the nature. And this language is in terms of number of people being sick, number of people going to the hospital, so on and so forth. It's a numeric number that is cryptic, but also is a language. And then you can use a large language model to generate what's the next paragraph of this numerical foreign or even an alien language. And then what is that? Is that becomes a long-term forecasting into the future. I'll say, okay, great. I don't know too much about infectious disease. I don't know too much about large language model. This is my first paper getting into that domain, but it seems to be worth a shot. Again, it was before OpenAI, ChatGPT days, so we have our first paper kind of putting together a language model backbone and applied it on the time series of on the sequence model of people getting sick, people going to the hospital, mobilities, and just other patient demographics, demographics like age and gender information into a vector of numeric number that just treat it as a alien language and try to generate using the large language model AI to generate the next paragraph and looking at what's going to be the forecast. So interesting enough, I didn't have it show it here, but high levelly, you can think about it as you have a state level number of death predictions. The prediction number, it kind of works. It works very similar to a linear model, statistical, like a RIMA model. It kind of works similar to this, really, and sometimes even worse than for the COVID part. So we say, okay, that's an interesting idea. I wouldn't say it doesn't work, but obviously having a language model pulling out of the shelf for infectious disease prediction, we need some special tweak or adjustment. And immediately came into my mind is, well, this probably doesn't respect the ordering of the sequence too much. I'll give you an intuitive example. I can say I am here, or I can say here I am. The two for language really semantically means very similar things, but for time series, right? One is a upward trending time series, the other one is downward trending time series. The two are drastically different. So that's just an indication for me that on the language model, when it applies it to forecast the number of hospital admissions or number of deaths related to infectious disease over the next month, there must be some adjustment. And that has been a recent work of mine. I was able, after that, given some thoughts, able to recruit students and really work on this and publish in machine learning conferences and so on. I realized that this audience is more of an infectious disease interest, so I'm going to be really quick on this too. I just want to give two very high level paper that I think tells a very interesting story, maybe in a way that you could intuitively understand. So, if you ever use ChatGPT before, all right, or ChatGPT right now, you realize that, well, supposedly, if you ask a question, you should get an answer right away. But sometimes you can twinkle this thinking mode of ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever is going to think and think and think. What are they doing behind the thinking? All right, in the early days or in the DeepSeek is very obvious. So what they do behind the thinking is that they use this scratch paper to write out all their ideas, very, very lengthy response to a chat box. And then they kind of take this long scratch paper of a language model and feed it into another language model that kind of distill or summarize this lengthy scratch paper of words, verbose words, and into a more concise answer in the chat box. And that turns out to usually give a better result. Right? So high level description. Onto the time series, onto the infectious disease time series. It is a similar thing. So hopefully we want to say, if I have time series for Georgia, hospitalization, for another neighboring states, Florida, North Carolina, or some other states, New York, for example, the promise of deep neural network is that I throw it into the training, and if the true data coming from this part of the pattern is useful for prediction, this part of the pattern is useful for prediction, this part is useful for prediction. The promise of big data and neural network learning is that it's just going to learn all of these lines automatically. Nothing needs to be done. But practice, it turns out that if we allow additional space, latent variable, or call it scratch paper, for those data to be first summarized, each individual series to be summarized first, and then have a neural network that summarize the kind of condensed version of the sequence. This type of architecture will allows more usage of the time series domain computational power and storage for more accurate prediction. So that's one quick one among the 6 papers that I published. I just want to give you the details of another quick one that I also think very interesting. So in the time series forecasting, this one particularly answer the problem about in infectious disease prediction, we never have enough data, right? So even if I go back 2-3 years of weekly data, I have 150 data points maybe, and that's not nearly as enough as to train a neural network. And I will argue that to be right. So how do we enable a neural network or a transformer in the regime where we have limited training data? The answer is to train a in-context time series predictor, or I call it prompt engineering, right? What is prompt engineering? Well, prompt engineering in a way that typically I want to ask 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and what's the next value? That's how a normal people would ask a question. All right. If I am an engineer, the prompt, I don't ask questions this way. I ask questions in a very verbose way. I ask if I have 1, 2 that give 4, 2, 4 that give 8, 4, 8 that give 16, 8, 16, what does that give me? And this too is an equivalent question. But the engineered prompt has one advantage. It embeds training data in the question being asked so that it can provide a solution that is in context. What does that mean? That means that the same neural network or same model trained on this type of data or a rich amount of data can also be used on this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 type of prediction task. So it allows training of a conditional model, essentially pulling information on all time series and all time series patterns that it can identify, and therefore enable, call it zero-shot learning, that is, when there's no training data, it won't give a completely miserable prediction. It will still try to use the training data embedded in the function call signature to generate something that is sensible. So you will argue, yeah, a Riemann model will work on this. Another time series model will work on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But my answer to those will be, yes, it could work, but typically you need to re-estimate the model parameters whenever you change your time series. This allows your model parameter to stay fixed. And that gives us an advantage to train the time series forecasting on general patterns outside infectious disease. And hopefully those patterns can be informative on what are the typical pattern on the seasonal varied trend, and therefore can help with a better infectious disease prediction. But all of this so far are all very much machine learning, data driven. I do realize that a lot of the audience right here probably is more familiar with, okay, if you want to do the forecast, why don't we just do the SEIR model, right? There's a valid point. Epidemiologists has been spent so much time on coming up with this compartmental model. And in the low data regime, remember I was talking about in the April of 2020. That's all we can do. In the April and May of 2020, we are indeed estimating the effective reproduction number and use that as the forecast in the future. And that actually outperform all of the data-driven method. So is there a way for us to kind of combine them? Not combine them as an output and take an average, but combine them as, can they merge the differential equation information into the search engine information, into the calibration, the reported case count and all that? The answer is, yeah, we've been thinking about that and we have a way to put them together. The whole idea right here is, again, extremely simple. So if I have some reported data, all right, I'm going to draw an illustration, right, that should follow this. Typically, we do data calibration. Data calibration is a tedious way. We do a trial and error. So let's say a start point is right here. Give me a set of beta parameter, sigma parameter, gamma mu parameter. I solve for the equation. It looks like this. I look at how much error I'm making from the reported data and try to tweak around a little bit. Oh, maybe my beta is too low here. Maybe I increase my beta a little bit so that it can become a shape like this that fits the data slightly better. That's the typical calibration exercise that we are all familiar with. So I come up with this data-driven method saying, okay, that seems awfully inefficient. So think about it as we are trying to feed the curve to the data. And every time I'm proposing a new curve, I'm trying to hope that it is close to the data. But because I have a data, I can actually start with a curve, right? What am I starting? Maybe I'm starting with a piecewise linear or piecewise quadratic linear interpolation, polynomial interpolation of the data. The purple line have no knowledge about the differential equation, but that's okay. At least I fit the data. And then I kind of make my purple line aware of the differential equation. How? If I have this to be, think about it as piecewise cubic function, then the derivative of it is a piecewise quadratic function. I put the piecewise quadratic function towards the right-hand side of my differential equation, it will still work, right? And it gets effectively a L1 penalty or L2 penalty on the difference between the differential equation and the curve, and therefore kind of a gently massage the curve so that my purple line is becoming closer to the data and the differential equation information. And therefore, that give me the best estimates, a very simple calibration of the differential equation to the empirical observed data. And because underlying that, I'm actually not using a piecewise polynomial. I'm using a machine learning technique called Gaussian process. that is actually earlier used in the COVID part in non-stationary Gaussian process as well. This Gaussian process easily incorporates exogenous information such as Google search information, Google search volume, so on and so forth. And that's our work, kind of merging a physics or kind of domain knowledge into a data-driven way of doing a infectious disease prediction into the future. Of course, in the SEIR model, there are other variants. For example, the time variant R0, R0, the effective reproduction number needs to be changing. How do we accommodate that changing? Well, easy. Why don't we make the R0 a piecewise polynomial as well? While in the actual implementation, we make R0 a Gaussian process, all right? Doesn't mean anything. Just think about it. Make R0 a piecewise cubic function, all right, as well. And the entire framework that I just proposed still works, and it still kind of put things together. So immediately we have a time variant R0 that can be immediately incorporated. And then onto the infectious disease, especially on the on this SEIR model, there are so many model variants. I can do SIR, SEIR, SEIRD, SIRS. Which is the model that best fit the data? Well, the statistician or the machine learners have this cross-validation idea that is essentially thinking about, okay, in parts, when I have 5 data points, can I only fit the data of this 4 and test the fit on this triangle one? And then I do it again, fit on here, and test it on this triangle one. Therefore, I kind of have 4 or 5 different models run through this way. I get this kind of cross-validated error at each of the triangle looping through them, and I select the one with the smallest cross-validated one. The principle of this is very simple. The problem is without a machine learning way of calibration, each time you have to recalibrate on this data and evaluate on this triangle. It's very costly. Not to repeat, now you have 5 data points, you need to repeat this process 5 times. It becomes prohibitively costly. But if you have access to a machine learning way that kind of fits the data in one go and naturally incorporate a confidence interval, you kind of can do this cross-validation in a very easy fashion. And that's why we can kind of assess the differential equation model fit to the data by using this kind of machine learning based calibration technique. We have some more development on this, although inspired on the ODE side, nothing's really stopped us to kind of naturally extend that onto the partial differential equations. We are then comparing with the finite element method. We actually have a very natural link to finite element methods that I'm not going to go through too much into that. Just that, SIR ODE can also be a technique that we propose for this, can also be applied on the PDE side. And of course, software. We have implementations in C++, R, Python, MATLAB. In fact, we only have implementation in C++, and then we port it to R, Python, and MATLAB so that different communities can use that. So all of this, put them together, was the end impact. The end impact is really we are participating in this CDC-led hospitalization prediction effort. Okay, this is called CDC Flu Site. I've been part of it since 2016 when I have my model on using the Google search information. And most recently, because my approach has been kind of becoming more and more independent. If you go to this website, well, the government shut down, reopened, so this should still be available now. If you go to GARTEC Ensemble, those are the 2 methods that I've been using and discuss in this talk. I've been kind of available to the CDC. And what is great about our method is during the peak time, peak week, when it actually matters the most, our method have the smallest error. Our method is not great when things are really calm. We are introducing, using Google search information, we're introducing a lot of sometimes smaller fluctuations that we are trying to adjust right now. But I think when during the period that it matters the most, we are actually pretty accurate. And one of the other reason that we're still adjusting, still working on that, is that Google and online search behavior is a keep changing thing, right? So think about it. When Google first have this search volume information in 2004, the digital landscape is very different. 2004, you search it on a laptop computer. Now you search it on your phone, right? And then 2022, OpenAI coming with a ChatGPT, you see the Google search volume goes down a lot. Right now, I don't use Google as often as I previously did, right? Now, if I want to get some easy information, just prompt it to ask ChatGPT. So the search information behavior has been changing. There's also prevailing differential privacy. If you don't familiar with differential privacy, just think about Google would artificially inject noise in their data for some good privacy reason. And while you say that if I have large individual searches, sum them up together, you will get this. But if you do some pre-processing as a combined search volume, we'll do a data pre-processing, you will have a much better and stronger signal compared to the raw. So all of this data and information, unfortunately, is needed because Google's update, and this is actually pretty useful for not only infectious disease prediction, but also like GDP forecasts, unemployment rates forecasts, for example. If the search volume for where to claim unemployment benefit, the employment rate is likely indicator of unemployment rate going up. So there is a even broader applications of this, even outside the digital kind of disease detection and the disease forecast. So going back to this kind of bird's eye view about my solution to the disease forecast. Hopefully now you can make sense of this much better. Just a recap, we started on the flu side and really focus on using the Google search information for national level forecast. And then later on, we kind of build a model, regional model, and then leverage the electronic health records for a 4-week ahead prediction. And there's some dengue fever, other type of disease that we can also do. And during the COVID time, everybody is really rushed, and this is the time really, our work becomes more important than ever before. We look at syndromic versus surveillance data versus pharmacy data. We continue to use Google search information for state level forecasts and county level forecasts using linear model, and improve accuracy using a nonlinear kind of a smoothing model. And finally, have a joint COVID plus a flu prediction. And in this time, we have this idea of treating the time series or treating the COVID case and deaths as a alien language and try to generate the next paragraph. And they kind of work, but not work great, which inspired us to further develop transformer models, the backbone of a large language model, so that it better suits for disease forecasting. And of course, another completely different way of doing that is using an SEIR type of model that we kind of, this is too small. Using SEIR type of model and doing is SEIR better or SIR better or SEIRD better or SRS better, some PD inference and model assessments, model validations, all that. So all of this together, I'm still participating in the CDC-led effort of FluSight, trying to provide my kind of now machine learning alternative data, large language model, and SIR differential equation aware forecast into the CDC. Hopefully they will reopen and start to recollect data next week, and for a more informed decision. And as the most recent development on this front, not only working with CDC, I'm also trying to engage municipal level, trying to predict emergency department visits so that all the insight we provide can be translated into a better immediate actions. Thank you. That's all I have for you today. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Great talk. Veronica, did you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is a fantastic talk. I really enjoyed. Thank you. So you mentioned that your current model is pretty accurate, right? Given forecast quite accurate for 4 weeks. But I'm curious, because you have lots of experience, you said you are doing it from 2016, right?
Yeah.
And probably in some cases, when you look retrospectively to CDC data, probably model fails, right?
Yes.
And probably it failed badly. So then my question is, when it fail, how do they fail? Are errors more related to like sudden structural breaks, new variants, policy shift, more like changes in clinical practice or something else? Could you comment? Just curious because
Yeah, very good question. Thank you, Veronica. I can talk about two general type of failure. One first type of failure is specific for me. Okay, when we use Google information, we are unfortunately at the mercy of Google, and I do this research of pre-processing for a good reason, because as of the April of 2024, my model suddenly becomes really, really bad. It turns out that in the April of 2024, Google quietly changed their engine about what to return in their search information. It used to be not looking like this, okay? It used to be some real data that have patterns and all that, and suddenly become looking like this. And then my model will not be able to extract information from a Google data source update. And that the failure symptom behavior is that suddenly I get very, very noisy predictions all over the place. The root mean square errors can be really, really bad. And the reason finally we've come to realize is that the search data quality deteriorate a lot, which prompts us to do this research. This is specific to me. Second one that is more specific, more generally for everyone is I'm showing the CDC flu site from 2024 season to 2025 season. This season is particularly challenging because this is the first season post-COVID. The hospital no longer have mandatory reporting duties to the CDC, and there is some structural change in the data collection mechanism. So therefore, the training data, historical training data, do not accurately reflect what will happen in this season. And a lot of people actually overpredict the peak. And unfortunately, in this case, there's not much we can do. We are slightly better because we kind of update our model on a weekly basis. So we kind of quickly adjust ourselves. And we also have exogenous information. But a lot of other models that rely heavily on the historical data patterns and even those SIR model calibration type, they will suffer a lot. This is because a underlying data structure change that also break. And third reason I also think about COVID time. COVID time, we essentially think there's no reported flu. The COVID time, everybody is doing a COVID-19 forecast hub. The general belief is that during the COVID time, when you do the social distancing and wearing a mask when you go out, that's in general enough to eliminate a lot of the flu activities. So those are outliers. None of the model really works well if you were to predict 2021, for example.
I actually have another question. So because policymakers, they just want to know what will happen if we intervene, right?
Yeah.
So have you explored some hybrid frameworks where you can link the forecast with some causal and mechanistic model and say that if we do this intervention, then it will be, or it's would be very difficult? I don't know.
It's a fantastic question. That's why beside CDC flu site, this is a forecasting hub. There's also a scenario hub. The scenario forecast hub. the scenario hub doing exactly that under different perturbation and assumptions, what will happen. So those are doing scenario analysis. A lot of my model is unfortunately machine learning based on historical data. So I would say, if you are having a differential equation, it's easier to think, okay, if beta value goes up a little bit, what will happen? If the sigma value goes down a little bit, what will happen? Or if you have a contact matrix C, changing non-pharmaceutical interventions, changing those, what will happen? In the machine learning way, it is a lot harder to get a causal what if type of analysis. Is an inherent limitation. So let me go to this scenario. This part, those pink charts will be better at those. This will be terrible at those. And let me think. This may be a question mark. I can do some what if scenario in what if the search engine go up, but I don't have it. For example, like if the contact rate goes down, what will happen? This method is better suited. This method is terrible, and this method is kind of in between.
Any other questions from our audience today?
So first of all, interesting. The path is good. Exploring new paths is always a good idea. However, I am asking you much more basic questions. You keep on saying predict, you keep on saying other things. The question is, with the data, we accumulated during COVID-19 a lot of data. My question to you is, at the current point, with the data that we have, which is a lot, do you believe that we can actually forecast forward? At all, with all our tools, all our arsenal, do you believe we can forecast?
I got exactly the question from healthcare officials. And I think what the consensus of the community is, it's doable, but the accuracy is still not to a degree that is convincing enough. What do we mean there? That means there's no universal model, for example, among so many teams right here, okay? Participating in CDC flu site, we're all trying to get it right, but nobody is able to consistently get it right. And that, for me, the stability of the model across season is a problem. And then the accuracy is better than what we had before, like pre-COVID time. But still, people get it wrong sometime, and it is just very hard. I would say that, I am not, okay. I was talking to someone, and discussion in the community is that, let's say, think about weather forecast. Weather forecasts 50 years ago, people kind of believe in that, but sometimes not. Weather forecast right now is really good because we have real-time sensor, real-time data in a lot of locations. Historical data can only help you that much. And I think right now the prediction is still despite the COVID and we have collected those much data, we still don't have the ground system like a weather forecast type that we have stations and sensors all over the place. We have not there yet.
Okay, thank you. So allow me to summarize it and tell me if I'm telling you. You believe it's possible in the future, perhaps. You believe it's possible to forecast in the future. So this is, but so you cannot prove now that we can, at this point, with the data we have, you cannot prove that all our arsenals of tools can forecast things forward. Did I more or less say what you said correctly?
Good. I think that is the same sentiment. Yes.
Good. Let me go to the follow-up question then. Then what can we do? Can we explain what happened with the data that we have? Because this goes in the direction of the LLMs that you're using. They're powerful there.
That is a very good question. What can we Okay. Let me repeat the question. Then what can we do? And can we explain things? I think there are, okay. Let me reframe the question. Okay, why are we doing this? All right. So what's the end utility of all of this? All of it. One is situation awareness. Things is going to be really bad that we know, and we kind of want to have a forecast. And secondly is promote people to have vaccination if things is going to be bad. And the third is nuclear, like school shut down during the COVID time. That was nuclear, but that action will be triggered very, very rarely, and probably you don't need a forecast. You need the situation to be already bad to trigger that. So in order to do that, I think the forecasting really help with preparedness, readiness. That's why right now we are trying to do a municipal level emergency department visit forecast to try to get a little bit more actionable insight, and also related your kind of the what if scenario type is related to the scenario hub, where people are trying to use that as a scientifically backed evidence to communicate to the local communities to advocate vaccination and so on and so forth. Causally, if we do this, the forecast will change that way. I think that one still is better handled in the scenario hub rather than my initiative involved in the flu site forecast. The flu site forecast probably help more with the hospital staffing, emergency department visits, so
on. James, can I continue, or does anyone have other questions? I don't want to take all the time.
No, go ahead, Jacob. I think
Okay.
we have it at five more minutes.
Okay, I'll try to summarize. So look, you're going in the correct direction. You're using something new that just evolved that now is transforming the entire world. Those transformers that appeared in 2017 are powerful, the attention mechanism as well as many others. But you are still using them in a very limited way of channeling them towards doing something that everyone's doing. We're using other tools, and they don't have much advantage, because basically those are glorified parrots, because they repeat things they saw in the past in a generalized way.
Yep.
So however, those same tools can now do very powerful things like create images out of text and things like this in a way that actually transforms things. So have you thought about using those, not for forecast, but for example, take the data and add some text into it and see whether it can root out text that makes sense or not? Or because you have a very powerful tool at hand, I'm trying to figure out what else can you do with it other than doing what everyone else has done. And at this point, I can say that there are many, many negative elements saying, oh, we could not at this point forecast what happened. People are now writing the lessons learned, and they're not very nice, by the way. I'm organizing this to some degree so I can see what's happening. I wrote some myself. So the question is for you is, can you take it in a direction that will be much more powerful and use that tool for much bigger advantage than you are doing it now?
That is a very interesting question. I have not thought about, taking a tool like large language model here, combine them with a text prompt and generate a what if scenario of the time series forecast for me. I have not yet explored that way. What we have right now, all of this, I can show you that the latest spotlight I have is, once I study transformer better for time series forecasting, I realized there is some inherent limitation in the transformer attention mechanism design itself, and therefore I propose some new modification of the attention mechanism that serves better for forecasting. And it turns out that I try those on the text, image, and all other tasks. I also give better text generation results. So in a way, it feedback to the large language model, the real language and the image thing. But I have not really combined those. I kind of have a two-way street right now, but I have not completed a round trip back, to get a better language and use those better language to kind of input a prompt and let the model explain how it make the prediction, for example. That would be something interesting, but I have not done that. But right now, all of them are published in machine learning conferences. I got spotlights for the new innovations in there. I'd be very much want to see how we can, what are the new directions.
We have to talk. We'll talk more.
Yes.
There's a question from Itamar. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, since you mentioned weather prediction, so there is something to learn from that example, because I didn't hear about data assimilation. And that's a very powerful tool in weather prediction and climate, etc.
This work can be think about as a data assimilation. So when the follow-up work, I don't this one, okay. In the PDE part, we actually frame our problem as a data assimilation. So weather forecast, those differential equations are very, very complicated. And we tried a little bit using the Navier-Stokes equations on the PDE side, feed those data using a machine learning technique that also respect the governing differential equation. But that realm, that area, I would say, is large. It's still very, very. I have not kind of making a unified theme between, let's say, a weather data simulation to the infectious disease forecast. Other than that, in the disease we have a much simpler model and just finding out what's the R0 value right there. But I'm happy to talk and explore how we can better leverage data assimilation. But all I'm trying to say is that our work is framed into a data assimilation on the PDE side.
Okay, great. If your PDEs are simpler, and the weather prediction is more complicated and successful in 4D modeling, you may want to consider it, or you may find somebody who does it already.
That's what we are trying. I kind of alluded to it just now a little bit. I'm doing general time series prediction right here. So there are right now, my flagship application is on infectious disease just because I know it better. But in order to convince machine learning community, we have to try it on standard data sets. And those standard data sets involve electricity demand, involve weather forecast, for example, climate forecast, for example. So we try those, and they are performing better than the off-the-shelf machine learning model. But I have not compared them with someone who actually do the real weather forecast.
Okay, I think we've had a good discussion. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it very much, and I look forward to seeing people next week. Thank you again.
Thank you.